15 on Tuesday, May 28th, 2019, and the Carroll City Council meeting is now in session. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please note everyone's in attendance except Councilwoman Seaman. Our first item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which is approval of the minutes from the May 13th meeting, approval of bills and claims. We have no licenses and permits this evening. And we have an application for tax abatement under the Urban Revitalization Plan for Court Street LLC, doing business as Lincoln Highway Suites at 117 East 6th Street. If there are no questions, we'll go ahead and I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. No other discussion. We'll go ahead and vote, please.
Base?
Yes.
Haley?
Yes.
Dirks?
Yes.
Fleshner?
Yes.
Cox?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. Are there any oral requests and communications from with regards to items not on the agenda from the audience? Seeing none. We have no ordinances this evening. Our first resolution is the fiscal year 2018-2019 budget amendment number 1, and it is 5/17, and we will open a public hearing. And Laura.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the time for the public hearing for our fiscal year 18-19 budget amendment number 1. We briefly discussed the items at the last council meeting, but the notice of the public hearing was published in the Daily Times Herald on Friday, May 17th, which is in accordance with state code. I will not go through all the items. I will note that the items included, with the exception of one, are all items that were part of our re-estimates of our fiscal 19 budget when we were preparing our fiscal 20 budget. The one item that is different is an item that we actually had included in our fiscal 20 budget for our street resurfacing 2019 project. We were planning on doing that, or most of the expenditure would have been in fiscal 20, but the contractor got most of the work done, and it's nearly complete if I understand correctly. And so most of the expenditure actually will be made in fiscal 19. It's not like we are adding a new project, it just got done sooner than we originally had anticipated. So this is the budget amendment that will get filed with the county auditor, unless there's any questions.
Are there any questions from the public? Seeing none, it is 5:18, and we will close the public hearing. And then I need a motion to approve the fiscal year 2018-2019 budget amendment number 1.
So moved. Second.
There is a motion and a second. If there's no other discussion, we'll go ahead and vote, please.
Base?
Yes.
Dirks?
Yes.
Fleshner?
Yes.
Cox?
Yes.
Haley?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Next item is the Carroll City Hall East Stoop and Entry Stairs Design Services. And Mike, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As the council is aware, during construction at the City Hall site, the contractor ran into some issues with the east wall of the building, which the decision was made to actually demolish a portion of brick structure. Some of that demolition had to occur below ground surface and impacted or required the necessity to remove the east stairwell from that site. At this point, we are now looking to replace those, and we need to retain the services of OPN to actually design those and do some structural work, so with our structural engineer on it to complete the plans. Attached in the council packet was a proposal from OPN to complete those services. The total amount was $2,900. Now the cost for that work would be covered out of the miscellaneous portion of the budget, and at this point we are currently well under expenditures in that line item portion of the budget and expect to remain well under our overall budget for that line item. So staff's recommendation is the Mayor and City Council consider and approve the resolution approving an amendment to the professional services agreement with OPN Architecture in the amount of $2,900 for the design of the east stoop and stairs. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the council has.
That you're expecting any additional construction time for this?
I am,
Did they give you that, or?
so they're likely, with the change order from Baiting, there will be additional
Time.
days added, and you'll see in the next item, right now, the City Hall date is projected to be October 3rd. What I will tell you is that project is running well ahead of schedule, and Baiting has actually authorized us to set our move date for August 23rd. So.
For City Hall?
For City Hall. So we, even though you'll see the change order will say October 3rd, we're gonna be well in advance of that.
With regards to ADA accessibility, we're still to the west side for accessibility, we're not changing anything around the east side, correct?
Correct. So the accessible route to the building is the west side of the building into the parking lot. With that said, there is a ramp on the east side that will remain after this project's completed. It does not meet accessibility, and the doors aren't being set up with automatic openers, but someone that has some limited access may choose to enter that way also, but that's not our designated ADA entry.
Thanks for the clarification.
Have you thought about when you're gonna move in?
August 23rd.
Okay, that's the date that, so you are gonna move in on that
Yeah,
date?
that's what right now we're planning to move.
Okay, and we assumed we were gonna be renting until when?
July 31st, so we'll have an additional month of rent.
Any other questions for Mike with regards to the east stoop and entry stair design services? If not, I need a motion to approve the amendment to the professional services agreement with OPN Architects for the design of the entry stoop and stairs at a cost of $2,900.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. If there's no other discussion, we'll go and vote, please.
Base? Yes. Dirks?
Yes.
Cots?
Yes.
Haley?
Yes.
Fleshner?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. With that, we'll move to reports. And our first report this evening is the Carroll Public Library, Carroll City Hall change order number 5. And Mike, please.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. During construction at both the library site and the future City Hall site, there were a number of unexpected items that we encountered during construction. At this point, change order number 5 includes a total change of $17,800. Includes a number of items, including changes to stormwater at the library site and some locks, along with a number of other changes. The proposed change order number 5 also adds 2 days to the contract for completion of City Hall and 8 days to the library portion of the project. The new completion date for City Hall is October 3rd, 2019. As I indicated just a few seconds ago, it does look like we'll be well in advance of that. And the library completion date is set for January 2nd of 2020 at this time. The original construction amount was $4,526,100. The first 4 change orders that were approved added $210,507 to the overall project cost. With this 5th change order of $17,800, the total contract amount will now be $4,754,407. The budget for the Carroll Public Library, Carroll City Hall project included a planned construction contingency of $362,088. After the approval of change orders 1 through 4, $151,581 of the planned construction contingency remains. And if the 5th change order is approved, we'll still have $133,781 of the construction contingency remaining. With that, staff is recommending that the mayor and council approve change order number 5 to the Carroll Public Library, Carroll City Hall project in the amount of $17,800. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the council has.
Water, is it space or standard water?
Yeah, I was gonna ask the same thing, Mr. Mayor.
Great question. So the exterior walls at the public library are having spray foam put in, and these are bars that get put into the metal studs to prevent them from expanding or moving once the spray foam is put in. They should have been included in the original plans, but they were omitted, so it was something we had to add at this point. If we would have had them in the plans or added them later, I mean, it's kind of a cost that would occur either way.
And that's an oversight by, to have missed that would be by the architect, is that right?
It would have been, but again, if they were in the original plans, it would have been a cost we would have incurred at some point in the project.
We would have had to do it either.
Yeah.
And the credit in the basement ductwork, I looked in the fine print and didn't see why that was, it appears to be a credit.
After we approved, I believe in change order number 4, we made some additional modifications to that ductwork, which in the end resulted in a credit to the city, and that's that credit. And we're constantly looking at how can we make changes to save us money, and we don't, obviously you see a number of these with large numbers, sometimes proposals come with larger numbers, and we just work with the contractor again to try to be most cost effective.
And actually, there's a couple more zeros on that, but it's good.
Mr. Pogge Weaver, we're coming to towards the end of this project, we can see a little light at the end of the tunnel. How are we looking on the overall budget?
I mean, overall, I'm pretty comfortable where we're at. You know, as a whole, I believe we're targeted to be at 6.8 or under. And there are some line items like miscellaneous, where we had a $400,000 miscellaneous budget. I think to date, we've spent $26,000. Now, there's some items in there that will be coming out of there. Actually, we've spent more, we've only spent about $26,000, but the AV comes out of that, which you approved at the last meeting. But overall, you know, that's gonna be a line item, will be well 6-figure under budget in that area. Contingency, I know there's some bigger items that are still going to be coming through. We will probably be close to 0 at the end of this project. But again, I think, and maybe even a little over our plan contingency, but again, when you look at the whole of the entire budget, is my belief at this point will be under the 6.8.
Very good, thank you.
Any other questions for Mike? If not, I'll need a motion to approve change order number 5 to the Carroll Public Library City Hall project in the amount of $17,800.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. If there's no other discussion, we'll go ahead and vote, please.
Fleshner,
Yes.
Dirks,
Yes.
Haley,
Yes.
Cots,
Yes.
Base. Yes. Motion is approved.
Thank you. The second item under reports is the Bankers Trust Paying Agent Assignment. And Laura, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple months ago, I was notified that the current company that we've been using, Bankers Trust, for our paying agent, they make our debt payments to whoever's holding the city's debt. They are being purchased or bought out by UMB Bank. Yeah, UMB Bank. And advice from our bonding attorney says that council should take action to actually accept this assignment. I mean, our other option is you could go and look at other companies out there that does this type of service. Bankers Trust had the lion's share of this type of service in the state of Iowa for governmental issuances. I did reach out to a couple of our local banks, and either they are not interested in getting into this because there are some specific special requirements that you'd have to be set up with the SEC in order to do this, or they are not set up at this time, but they might look into it. So at this time, I would recommend that council approves this assignment, and then going forward, we could definitely take a look at local banks if they do get into this type of service. We could take a look at that for a future debt issuance.
And this is something that we can change at any time, correct?
Yes. I'm not sure if you would want to do that with the current issuance that's outstanding, but each debt issuance, you could take a look at who you're using, yes.
And just for a frame of reference for this service, I mean, the city pays about $500 annually. And it's somewhat complicated in working with specific bond holders and tracking when bond sales occur, that you're paying the right person at the right time. And so, you know, it's kind of a specialized, low-fee type service.
So I guess from what Mike was saying, so we can, if we approve this, we can still change it if you find something that's more amenable.
I would say for a future issuance,
For
I wouldn't
future, okay.
necessarily, unless
leave
for
it
some
alone.
reason, we have not had any issues with Bankers Trust.
Right.
I'm not anticipating to have any issues with UMB Bank. They do a lot in the governmental debt market anyway, this is kind of a new service I think they're trying to get into in the state of Iowa.
Oh.
But they do a lot of governmental debt issuances outside of this, so I'm not anticipating having any issues.
It's probably safe to say the same people are doing it right now, physical people, probably
Yes.
the same people doing it.
Yes, it is, that's what they've told us.
Mhm.
Any other questions for Laura? If not, I need a motion to approve the assignment of trustee, escrow agent, and paying agent agreement with Bankers Trust Company to UMB Bank N.A.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. If there's no other discussion, we'll go ahead and vote, please.
Haley,
Yes.
Cots,
Yes.
Fleshner,
Yes.
Dirks,
Yes.
Base. Motion is approved.
Thank you. The next item is the Relay for Life fundraiser. And Mike or Brad?
I can take this one.
You can take this one?
Yep. Okay, the city received a request for a street closure on June 15th for a Relay for Life fundraiser. The request is to close Fifth Street from Clark to the alleyway between Clark and Court Street. The request also is to allow consumption of alcohol in the area and the sale of alcohol, which Curbs and Carroll Brewing will be taking care of, and we've been working with them to get this all coordinated and aligned. Attached to the memo that was with your council packet is the closure area. They're also gonna be having a 5K, so it shows the route for that, and we've been working with them to get that accomplished pretty safely, and we'll use officers that day to help with it also. The street is planning to be closed from 7 a.m. till 10 p.m., and this is a pretty low travel area during the weekends, and it shouldn't cause any traffic issues. The council has quite a bit of stuff to approve tonight if they do accept this, but the first would be the street closure of Fifth Street from Clark to the alleyway of east of Court, and then approval to allow for alcohol sales and consumption in the closed area, and then 2 outdoor services, one's for Curbs and one's for Carroll Brewing, and then the allowance of the 5K run on the city streets, and any insurance issues that may come up.
Brad, are they gonna follow like the last runner in this, or walker, that they could open up the streets after?
Well,
After
we're
the
gonna,
last-
Andy Ryman's kind of been heading, he's here too, he can answer any questions you might have, but we'll work with them and we'll make sure everything gets opened up. The route it's about half on the street, half on the trail, so there's not gonna be a lot of disturbance anyway. And prior ones that we used, especially for the rec center, we've kind of just hit some of the hot spot areas where there's higher traffic and made sure everything got safely through there. And once they're through those areas, then we'll open them back up.
You can open them back up.
Yep.
I can gladly be the last runner.
So you'll move the barricade?
Sure.
I was just thinking, you know, when you get through town, some of those side streets, people just want to get home and that sort of thing. Okay.
Yep. And we'll work with them on the hot spot areas that have the higher traffic locations. And they're staying away from the highway, so it won't be too much of a traffic issue, especially on a Saturday morning from 7 to about 10 or noon or so.
The run starts at
11.
11,
That sounds right.
so.
Either way, this will be pretty quiet.
I apologize for asking the question, because it's not specific to this, but this did raise a question. So when we do a street closure, who's responsible for the signage?
The street department historically has brought the signs down, and then the event coordinators will have to barricade. And in this case, there's gonna be some alcohol sales there, so Curbs has indicated that they're also gonna be putting up fencing to distinguish the liquor sales area.
And like I said, this doesn't pertain to this particular issue. I know this last week of the grant, that one issue I personally run into is I had pulled into the turn lane off the highway. I went to turn and saw the barricade and just,
And you're blocked, yeah.
yeah, so just something to consider for future closures.
And that's a hard one with the highway there. We typically don't have that busy of an intersection, so a lot of them are like block parties and things like that, pretty easy to take care of.
So apologies for going off topic, but
No, you're good. Any other questions for Chief or for Andy? If not, we'll have 5 different motions here. So the first one will be a motion for the street closure of Fifth Street from Clark Street to the alleyway east of Court Street.
so moved.
A second.
Got the motion on the second? If there's no other discussion, we'll go ahead and vote, please.
Cots?
Yes.
Dirks?
Yes.
Haley?
Yes.
Base?
Yes.
Fleshner?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. The next one is I need a motion to allow for alcohol sales and consumption in the closed area.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. No other discussion. We'll go ahead and vote, please.
Base?
Yes.
Fleshner?
Yes.
Cots?
Yes.
Dirks?
Yes.
Haley?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
And then I need a motion to approve the liquor license for the outdoor service for Curps for June 15th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. No other discussion. We'll go ahead and vote.
Cots?
Yes.
Haley?
Yes.
Dirks?
Yes.
Fleshner?
Yes.
Base?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
And then I need an motion for the outdoor service for liquor license for Carroll Brewing Company on June 15th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. If there's no other discussion, we'll go ahead and vote.
Haley?
Yes.
Base?
Yes.
Cots?
Yes.
Fleshner?
Yes.
Dirks?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
And finally, then a motion to approve the 5K fun run on city streets and outline any insurance requirements.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. If there's no other discussion, we'll go ahead and vote, please.
Cots?
Yes.
Dirks?
Yes.
Base?
Yes.
Fleshner?
Yes.
Haley?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you. The next item under reports is the sesquicentennial celebration. And Laura? And Shannon
Hello.
is, who wants to take that one first?
You guys should have maps in your packets, and I guess
Yes.
maybe we'll start with Friday. The Friday event is going to be a barbecue contest during the day with some food trucks, and into the evening, there will be a concert in the downtown area. Looking at closure of Adams from the highway down to Fourth, and then, Fifth from Carroll to Main, and then also on Fourth Street doing Carroll to Adams, and a little bit beyond. You can see on the map where we're looking at staging EMS. There had been an initial meeting in March with part of the city team, some of the volunteers working on this event. And since that meeting, there was a little bit of growth in the barbecue competition and what they're looking to accomplish, which is really exciting, actually. So we did decide that we do need to close additional area, just with movement in and out of those grillers off of Adams. We wanna give them an out on Main Street, so thought we could secure the intersection, let that group out when it's time, without completely disrupting some of the other areas. So what we're looking at, like I said, is that closure for the day of Friday the 19th from 8 o'clock is our registration time, and concert ends at 11:30 p.m. Cleanup will happen afterwards. So we're looking at liquor license to have alcohol in that area and approve those street closures. And do you wanna act on that and then go into Saturday, or are we doing it all together? The Saturday map in the Gray Park area, that's for the kids parade, the route is included. And then during the day, there are some similarities to Carroll Fest in that we'll have some activities in the park as well as the DMAC parking lot. In the afternoon, we've been working with Joel to do a, kind of a free swim and some fun activities at the pool for a couple hours. So just thought it'd be best for that area to have some closure, as well on Grant. Chief Berg, comments, thoughts, additions from our meeting?
All good, we've worked with them and everything looks like it should be fine.
It's kind of about like the Carroll Fest, isn't it? Not the same
On
type of thing.
Saturdays anyway, yeah.
So just in question in regards to the barbecue competition,
Yeah.
So at 6 o'clock when that's done, you talked about being able to let them out on the main street. Will that street stay closed then, or will the barricades move down further?
Yep, we'd like to keep it closed for the porta potties and just for safety truly. You know, we talked about trying to minimize the street closures, but realistically, when you get vehicle traffic and maybe some confusion if someone's driving in that area, we just feel like it's probably best to keep that closed for the duration.
Can you go explain about the Disney Beauty and the Beast, where that's gonna be, is it film or? what is it?
That actually is a performance the Arts Council is going to be doing in accordance with the symphony. It's gonna be a wonderful show. They'll be doing that in the rec center for the weekend.
I hear that's supposed to be quite the production.
Yes, I think they'll have a great addition to the weekend. You know, Friday isn't necessarily family entertainment, so that's gonna be another option for families, so it'll be a great addition to the agenda.
How about the alleyway through the mall? Is that gonna be closed?
Inside? Are
Yeah,
you
for-
talking?
To go from that parking lot to from the west?
During the day, no, and
No.
we did talk about securing that, you know, with having the gated area. We know that we'll post some signage and we'll have someone watching those doors to make sure
Okay.
alcohol doesn't leave the area.
Right. Okay.
Sorry for the inquisitive look. We did also have conversation between the theater and, oh man, it was Manpower. And so there's that
Mhm.
little alley north-south that has some utility underneath. We will have that closed off as well, so it's
Yeah, I see
secure.
it there, yeah, okay.
The barbecue competition, is that stuff that they're gonna be selling after they done with the competition? Or?
No, they will be provided additional meat for some tasting, but it's going to just be what's left. So once they plate their items for judging, there will be a little bit of ribs and chicken left for tasting.
First come, first served.
Yeah, be ready. Be
Will
ready.
any of them be over Saturday, do you think?
No, we're not gonna
Nothing
have them
like
here
that,
Saturday.
okay.
The food trucks too, I guess I should mention, we thought, you know, it's kind of not nice of us to have the smell of barbecue downtown all day and not be providing food. So we are starting food trucks at about 11 a.m. There will be kind of a variety. We are offering, there are some local vendors there as well as a couple others. So that'd be a fun addition and something different as well.
How's the reception from the local business owners in that area, Shannon?
We haven't heard a lot of comment. A couple local businesses will be participating. And we have had, you know, not necessarily related to the downtown, but the weekend as a whole, we've had some of the nonprofits reach out. And so we're really trying to work groups in the best that we can, knowing that we can't provide a solution for everybody for the whole weekend, but we are trying to fit people in as they may request.
Thank you.
The businesses that are there, will they have an opportunity to have a sidewalk display if they chose, since the street's closed, and just to have a little more presence, or?
Their ridiculous day is Thursday night, and I guess I can't say that no, they absolutely can't. I would assume some doors would stay open during the day, but, you know, I think they're going to have their hands full Thursday, and as conversation continued, I guess we didn't have a lot request that, but we're not opposed.
At the retail meeting, some of them said that they may put racks out on the sidewalk again on Friday, and, you know, because of that, what's going on. And they were very receptive to the idea of having the barbecue contest in the street. So the ones that were at the retail meeting were very pleased with the idea.
Awesome, wonderful. And then you guys are hiring private security too?
We have 8 security hired, so there'll be 2 at each gate and 2 roaming.
Okay.
Parking for the public, is it just wherever they can find it?
Pretty much.
Essentially, yes, we thought, with the county lot, city lot to the west, where we're at, the chamber lot, we're not providing shuttles or anything like that. We're not planning on it. There is some north across the highway too. So once we got through with the street closures, when we do notifications, we also thought we could reach out and ask some of the other places, you know, maybe the banks that are in the area, if their lots would be available. And also let them know the event's going on. So essentially, it is seen as available unless it's closed off specifically.
Courthouse isn't that far away.
Hey Jack, do we know by chance will the bike trail across the tracks be completed by then?
They were there today, and I reached out to them. It was not on their list to do right then, but they're in town, so hopefully we can get them to do that. I'll try to reach out to them tomorrow morning. It'd be very nice to have it done.
I'm not sure if they were there doing that, though. I think it
No.
was a broken panel. or
Yeah, they were
something.
there breaking panels, right? Yeah, no, they weren't there for,
Putting in the trail.
no.
Talking about the rail system, do they slow the trains down when this is going on through town?
We've tried and tried. We've had several different angles and conversations. Essentially, no, there's not much we can do with that, just turn the volume up a little bit. But we did have a cool addition. There is gonna be a passenger train go through on Monday the 15th. We were notified with that. A couple locals gonna be riding, which is kind of fun, so we'll be getting word out on that too. But that passenger train will stop here that week, so we thought a nice ironic addition to the week of celebration.
You park your Benz on the tracks.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we could, we can't do much with it, unfortunately.
When does that train go on Monday?
Monday the 15th, I guess, I don't
Do you
know
know
that we have a
where
time
it
frame
starts
quite
and
yet.
ends or not?
It starts in Council
Council
Bluffs
Bluffs.
and it goes to Boone, and then they get on a bus and are taken back to Council Bluffs.
But the
So-
train,
Oh, okay.
the train continues on from there, but it'll be in Carroll. Have they contacted you? They told me they're stopping and closing Carroll Street. That's where they're stopping.
Yeah, there will be,
It's, UP is always a great partnership.
Yeah, so they stopped at, the gentleman from UP stopped in the chamber office. This is the largest steam engine in the world that they just refurbished, and it'll be coming through with passengers on board. There's room for 150 passengers, and the last time, if you guys remember, in 2012, when they came through, they stopped at the depot. But this time, he said they will be stopping and closing Carroll Street. Just so you know.
They have like 10 minutes, they can close the highway, right? Close the road.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
But I assume they're taking on water, is their reason for stopping usually. So,
there you go.
Maybe.
fire department might be contacted as well.
Beside Jerry, and that's all on that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions for Shannon or Laura?
Thanks for all the work you're putting into this.
Yeah, looks good.
It's gonna be a fun weekend.
It is.
Yeah, all right, and we'll do, I think it looks like 3 different, so I'll need a motion to approve the street closure of the 400 and 500 block of North Adams, 100 and 200 block of West Fifth Street, and the 200 block of West Fourth Street.
Moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, we'll go ahead and vote, please.
Haley,
Yes.
Fleshner,
Yes.
Dirks,
Yes.
Katz,
Yes.
Base. Yes. Motion is approved.
The second motion is to allow the sale and consumption of alcohol on city streets.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. If there's no other discussion, we'll go ahead and vote.
Fleshner,
Yes.
Dirks,
Yes.
Haley,
Yes.
Katz,
Yes.
Base.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
And finally, we need a motion to approve the new 5-day Class B permit, which includes wine coolers with outdoor service for the Carroll Chamber of Commerce.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. If there's no other discussion, we'll go ahead and vote, please.
Base. Yes. Haley,
Yes.
Dirks,
Yes.
Katz,
Yes.
Fleshner.
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you.
I just have a couple other notes on that, if it's okay.
Because it's you, Shannon.
Because
yeah.
it's me. Thank you.
We'll change our vote.
We certainly are welcoming all volunteers. We'll definitely be in touch with that. But if you guys haven't started following the Carroll 150 Facebook page, definitely do so. We've started a series of historical videos. We're bringing in some of the residents from the community, Tom Farner's helping with that, and it's just incredible listening to stories and really getting out there and enjoying it. So Ashley's working hard to get that footage done, and she's been doing some clips already. So certainly tune in, listen to that, follow the page. There's so much just awesome information we're trying to get documented on the history, so it's pretty
Is it on
neat.
the Chambers.
It's
Facebook
on
page
the
that you can link
Carroll 150 page, and she's
Carroll
sharing
150
some of
page.
that, and also on the public TV channel,
Yeah,
we're
we'll
sharing some of that
eventually
too,
get on
so, yeah, just lots of neat stories
That's a
to
great
listen to
idea.
and enjoy, so. Yeah, well, thanks
Okay.
for taking time with us, we
Yep,
appreciate it.
Thank you. I trust everyone has read the committee reports and the monthly activity reports. I have no comments this evening. Any comments from the city council?
I have one.
Yes, Jerry, please.
I received a letter from a citizen which I thought merited bringing to people's attention. And I'm just gonna read what he said to me. Jerry, I work as a delivery driver and I'm writing to call something to your attention. It's very difficult to find address numbers on homes, especially at night. House and trailer numbers are missing or the color contrast is bad. It is not good when people are wasting time trying to locate your place during emergency or wasting delivery time when they have to hurry. Trailers in the trailer court should have posts next to each trailer with large numbers. I cannot use GPS, I cannot hear, and watch driving at the same time. Others could benefit quicker with clear numbers and contrast of colors. I look like a robber trying to spotlight in the dark or look hard to see numbers. Many houses and some apartments are without numbers. He signed it, okay, thank you, Jerry. And I read that letter and I talked to this person and I decided it merits being to the attention of the public. The reason I do is because I drove around myself and noticed that he's right. It's very hard to see the numbers. It's required, I checked with Mike, and it is required to have these numbers on homes and apartment buildings and trailers, and you'd be surprised how many don't. And I think that it would, I looked at my own and I decided I need to put something lit on there so that you can see it at night. But he has a good point, and I think if people are required to keep an address on their home, I would like to see people just kind of consider it if they would, and see if they could review that, certainly for delivery drivers, but also for the safety. And Greg, you know, GPS doesn't do everything. I'm sure it's easier to see an address, even if it's not the address you're going to, at least you won't make a mistake and go to the wrong one. So I just think it's something that I wanted to bring to the attention of the public.
Thank you.
No motion required.
How does the police get to locations?
We pretty much memorized everything in town. Once you get to a block, you just know your blocks and then how your houses fall. So the guys are pretty good about, if it's a 502, you know it's gonna be on probably the south side of the block, on the west side, so.
See, there's a lot of confusing things. I'll bring one up, right where I live, Lois Avenue. I live at 1943 Lois. You go across the street, you'd think it would be 23 Lois, it's like 180.
21st Street's the same way too.
Exactly, so there are places where it's confusing, even with the addresses on there.
It is, and that's our training, we just do it, so our guys, it's different for us since we do it every day, all the time, and that's part of our training, you have to learn the addresses for houses, so. I mean, these guys may too, but.
I guess I was wondering if there was a system you guys had that could be shared with delivery drivers.
Well, you just know if it's between First and Second Street, it's the 100 block, so all your house is gonna be one something, 3 digits. If it's between 20th and 21st Street, it's gonna be 2,000 something. So, yeah, there is, you know, we do this for 3 straight weeks in training. The first 3 straight weeks of their officers hire is strictly location, so it's not something you can just drive around and pick up real quick. It's gonna take some time to actually learn the streets and know the map.
Everything north of First Street, the even numbers are on the east side of the road.
Yep.
Odds are on the west. You go south of First, it's opposite of that.
That's confusing as well.
Because that's where our guys struggle, they think the tracks is your north-south. Well, it's like First Street is your north-south, so that's where they struggle with that. And then Main Street is your east-west divider, so anything east and west is east or west. And the same thing, when you go east, the even numbers are on the south side, and odd numbers are on the north side. And then go to the west, it's the other way around, so.
Well, just that alone, it just brings to point that it's not easy.
It's not easy, and you look at the town, it's different, it's not mapped in squared locations, the town has a bend to it, it goes with the tracks and Main Street curves, so it takes some practice for sure. So I don't know if the delivery drivers get used to it, or I don't know how that part is, but I know it takes some learning, and especially when new roads get put in, you gotta remember where they're at, where the house numbers are, so it's something you're always progressing with.
This particular person, I happen to know them, and they have a hearing impairment, and so it makes it even a little more difficult. That's where they mentioned that they can't hear the GPS and watch the road at the same time.
Yep.
So they can't use that. There's people like that. So.
And it is hard, but, not all the houses have, a lot of people use black letters, and if your house is gray or dark color at night, it's very difficult to see.
Black letters don't show up very well at night either, unless they have a porch light on, so.
Yeah, it can be very difficult.
Night's difficult, and then the police department is usually on scene before we get there, so that really helps us out, but We kinda use
Follow
the same
the
strategy.
Colored light.
Yep, you'll see, it's usually lit up pretty well with their comments.
Is this something when we hire a housing inspector that could be added to their list, or is that a different item?
We could, I mean, it's all about priority of staff resources. But, yeah, I mean, we do have a city code, it does say that you have to have minimum of 2-inch tall letters with contrasting colors. I'll get it right eventually. You know, so if you have a black house, you're supposed to use white letters, a light house, use dark letters, but, yeah, I mean, there's 4,000 premises in town, and it's a pretty big task to go just track down, does your house have lettering on it, or numbering? I think probably a more of a public outreach, which I think Jerry's trying to do today, is.
That's more what I'm looking for, is just for people to, well, in fact, my address is on my mailbox, on two places, when I took the time to look. One's on my mailbox, and I live at 1943. Well, if you look at my mailbox, I only live at 143 because one of the letters is down the ground. So, you know, I wanna fix that too. And, I didn't even read all of his letter, it was kind of interesting. He said, I've made some observations, gold lettering is very hard to see at night. And he's got several different things, and suggestions that he made that, you know, it was an interesting letter, and I visited with him and asked permission to bring it up, so.
Jeff, since you are here and you spoke up, perhaps you remember, didn't they go, was there a group that went around and spray painted the numbers on curbs a while back?
Right.
It seems to me like it happened twice. I remember
It was a
living at my
fundraising
parents'
event.
house,
There was one just a
over on
few years back.
Timberline, and
I think it's
then,
been, I think one time it was like the schools or some
was it the
group from
schools
the
that
school,
did
but
it?
another time I think it was a group from out of town that came in.
Okay,
And I know at one point, and I'm gonna say this was back in the 80s, for those of you who were born then, all the numbers on City Hall and the old library and the rec center, I put up because we had this ordinance and somebody came in and said, oh, isn't that nice? You guys have this ordinance, you don't even have your own buildings
Mark.
numbered. So I had those letters, or those numbers that are on City Hall, the old library, and the rec center, and I installed those myself, so.
That's, I remember them coming around and spray painting on the sidewalk, or the curbs, but then it's never happened again. After a while, it all wears off.
Wintertime, you don't see them.
Might be a good opportunity for
Right.
a school fundraiser or something again, like the pause that they do and the camper cave and things like that.
You know, on an outreach, from an outreach standpoint, Mike, couldn't we put this on our Facebook page at some point?
Yep.
Call out to folks? Maybe
Thanks,
the-
Jeff.
Maybe the media would help us again? No? All right, just check.
It's a fundraiser.
Through the water bill.
Yeah, we can look at, we'll figure out some outreach, and we'll work on that stuff.
Thank you.
Any comments from the city manager?
Then it's-
If not, that brings us to the rental housing code and inspection
Well, I
workshop.
got one.
Oh, sorry. Oh, Joe, you wanted to talk.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought, never mind. Okay, go
Or do
ahead.
you want
Go
somewhere
ahead.
else?
Nope, you go ahead and do it
I
now.
went to that day-long meeting in Des Moines, and I just wanted to get a little bit of a summary of what I took in down there. I went on to the youth part, following what they recommend for trying to attract youth. And kind of surprising, it used to be 12% of the people, of the youth wanted to go to the rural area, and the rest were in the cities. Well, now that has increased to 27%. So there's a trend to move out into the rural areas. One of the things that they want to make sure to have, if they move to a rural area, what I thought was kind of ironic, is fast internet. If they don't have 1 gigabyte, they're not really interested in moving into that local community. Some of the things that I thought was kind of a little bit different for this age group to be thinking this way, but they listed 5 important things, and the number 1 is good schools. Now, we're talking people about 35 years and under is what they were saying. So they've already got that in their mind, as the number 1 thing is good schools. And then the housing, they don't want any housing shortage, they gotta be able to get in. And the other thing was outdoor amenities, which we've got a lot in this town. And the fourth one I thought was kind of surprising, is they want to volunteer. But they don't want to volunteer for like this, they want to like clean the parks. You know, they want, you know, community service stuff where it's just 1 day or 2 days and then done for a while. They don't want to get into, you know, you sign your name on something and be there for a long time. And then they'd like to be within 45 minutes to an hour and a half of an urban area. So we'd be okay with that. You know, it's funny, people like in Carroll, their, you know, city would be Des Moines. Well, somebody in Coon Rapids, their city is Carroll. So it's kind of, you know, depending on how you look at it. But there is a trend for, you know, because of cost of living, they want to start moving back up to the rural areas. So, you know, we need to keep thinking on that when we're talking about housing and things like that, and amenities to try and attract people. There was one other computer program they had down there, and it was a job search program, and we looked underneath welders. And if you wanted to be anywhere in the United States, or you could go Iowa County, wherever you wanted, but what's interesting is the $1 an hour that they were paid, but it also had the cost of living in the community you're in. In the last column, it had a plus or minus of your town, Carroll, Iowa, compared to whatever city you would be looking at. Like, for example, New York, the wages in New York for a welder are more than Carroll, but the net cost was $8.32 more if you were a welder in Carroll than if you were a welder in New York. So there is a local company that's looking at purchasing that software, and we'd be able to share that for future if we need to try and enhance somebody to come to Carroll. That's what I had. Mike was there for a little bit too. So.
Yeah, and that computer program was really interesting too, because one of the things it did was, if you found a community, even in the area, that had like an RN, and you found that the cost of living for that RN would be beneficial to move to Carroll, you could actually see a list of people that actually had active searches going on to say, I'm interested in moving. And I mean, every community, and they use different sources like LinkedIn and Indeed, where people kind of post their resumes, so you could actually find people in these communities that it made sense to move to Carroll and kind of do a direct campaign towards them, and so that was really interesting. I went through a site selection, actually you were in that one too. From my perspective, very interesting. I still disagree with the outcome of what was the best site, but I guess I'm not a site selector. But just really good information about when you have a potential company looking to come to your community, how to really put that best site forward to meet the needs that they had, and how to kind of ferret through some of those things that maybe the site selector's looking for that would disqualify you off the gate, and being mindful of those things that are must-have, it's like site needs to have, and those things that are kind of a negotiable item. There was a session that I thought was really interesting compared on robots. It was kind of more of a keynote, and just really interesting discussion about how much robotics is changing, especially in the world of manufacturing. And where today you have robots, the entry fee is really expensive, and you need programmers to program a robot. How they have robots that are self-learning. And so if you have that task that's just repetitive all the time, you can teach a robot in a half hour how to do that repetitive task, and then it's going to do it as many times in an hour as it can get it done. And the cost of entry for those robots are dropping. And then they showed a video of these two-legged walking robots that was almost comical because they couldn't stand up and they're falling over. And then 18 months later, how that technology has progressed, where these same robots, same companies, they're jumping on boxes and they're running faster than you can run. And just the technology and agility and how those companies are moving. And I think the scariest thing was, to me, and I'll stop, is he said with the robots and how they're coming along and progressing so quickly. And by the way, this guy was the CEO of a robotics company, so kind of a biased individual, but he said he believed that a third of the population will not only be unemployed in 10 years, but will be unemployable in 10 years because of how quickly these things are advancing. And, you know, so it's just a thing that I think communities are gonna have to be very mindful to have some agility into the future as some of these things come to age.
One more important thing that they had is the youth, when they graduate from college or so, they look for areas of employment for loan forgiveness. That would be where they go to work. That is totally gone now. They're looking for the better of the job and not worrying about loan forgiveness. So it was interesting, those trends are changing.
Thank you very much. We will then move on to our rental housing code and inspection workshop. And Greg, please.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. As you're all aware, at the strategic planning session held in December 2018, the council selected as a priority item the establishment of a rental housing code and inspection process, the addition of one full-time code enforcement officer to implement and oversee the rental housing code has been included in the 19-20 budget. And this budget does include funding for startup, training, and implementation costs for this initiative. And the additional duties of the code enforcement officer would also deal with nuisance abatements within the city. So, in my estimation, the first step in establishing the rental housing code and inspection process is discussions relating to the requirements of the rental housing code itself. And I've attached, and you all should have a copy of the draft proposal for its initial review and discussion. And then the next step in the process would be to conduct an open house and have an informative meeting for landlords or other interested parties for a draft code overview with those folks. And then if there's any changes or to the draft rental housing code would be presented for council consideration and adoption in the July and August timeframe. So hopefully you've all had a chance to look through this. I guess we can spend as much time or as little time as you'd like, but I'll kind of hit some of the highlights in here and certainly stop me if you want to discuss anything on there. So the first chapter, I'd like to thank too, I guess, Mike was a big help in this, and Brad reviewed it, Laura I think had some input, and Dave also reviewed the draft code for compliance with law and everything like that, so appreciate their help on it. But really what I did is I went out and looked and contacted some other cities on rental housing codes, contacted Chris Whitaker at Region 12, got some input from him, and then the other staff members here, we compiled this list. And again, this is a draft proposal and it's flexible, so we'll just run through it and see what we come up with. The first few pages are definitions or terms that are used throughout the code as a reference. And getting into on page 6 there, certificate of rental permit. Basically, it requires everyone in the city that offers for rent any single-family dwelling, room, houses. There is an exception, and I found this to be kind of standard. There's an exception for a dwelling or living unit located within an owner-occupied single-family dwelling, condominium, or cooperative containing no more than 2 dwelling or rooming units, unless the owner-operator holds a valid permit. And then again, the rental permit will be offered for a specific period of time, and through that time period would be inspected. And then after we have these meetings, there would be an application for anyone looking to rent a room or apartment buildings, anything like that would have to comply to that. And then after inspection, yes.
What about if someone wants to rent just a room out of their house?
That
Would still
be-
fall under the same thing?
Yeah, they would not be subject to inspection now.
They wouldn't be
If it's
subject to inspection?
owner-occupied.
If it's owner, okay.
Yeah,
They can have up to 2, they can rent up to 2 rooms out. So if you wanted to rent out 2 rooms in your house, then you wouldn't be subject to this. But
this.
if you did rent the
The
third
third
one,
one.
technically you
that's
would
Okay.
be
yeah,
subject
fall
to
into
this.
Gotcha.
At least the way it's drafted now.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, the issuance after inspection, if everything meets code and, is all in compliance, then a rental certificate would be issued. There is, an extension period in here that if the code enforcement officer deems that you may need a little more time to get things corrected towards the end of your rental lease period, that can be granted by the code enforcement official. Okay, I don't know if there's any questions with that.
Do those permits have to be displayed publicly?
I don't believe there's any requirement for that. No.
Nothing to,
No. Okay, the Inspection Enforcement Authority, the code enforcement officer is authorized to administer and enforce the provisions in the rental housing code and to make inspections and determine conditions of all dwellings, dwelling units, rooming units, structures, and premises located within the city. And I think this is kind of important. I think kind of the reason we're doing this is that the code enforcement officer may perform, the duty of safeguarding the health, safety, and welfare of the occupants of a dwelling and of the general public under the provisions of this chapter. So I think really that's what this is all about. I mean, you know, there are some areas, and again, I think a lot of the renters are good landlords, but there are several out there that are not. And we get complaints, I think, time to time, Brad, you maybe do, at the police department. We've been acting on a few of those. So really, I think the bottom line is we want to, you know, protect our citizens and make sure they're living in places that, you know, are functional and, you know, kept in good repair and that sort of thing.
And you know, I've seen in my career, you'll get the call and someone will say, you know, my landlord is not replacing the shag carpet. Well, we're not the shag carpet cops. You know, we are health and safety. Those are the things that we're gonna take on. This is not about aesthetics per se. This is not about making improvements or getting into even landlord-tenant disputes. It's we're making sure that the households are functional, clean, safe to be in. And so there's always a fine line. The city's, I think, done a good job of trying to stay out of the fray of kind of those tenant landlords. But I think Greg's hit on the nose where, you know, we're here again for that health and safety aspect.
And again, these are really minimum standards, and like building codes are. You're not asking, you know, the world of these, just minimum standards to make housing practical and safe, so.
Greg, on the search warrant issue, I see the code enforcement officer can apply for the search warrant.
Mhm.
Can a police officer still do the same too?
That might be a question for David Brad.
So it'd be an administrative search warrant, and Dave works with us on all of our administrative search warrants, which is what we use for our nuisance abatements. And my understanding was we would probably go with them anyway, just to get the search warrant started. That's more of a safety thing. Usually that's when, if someone's already denying your access, they're probably not gonna be the easiest to work with, so we're gonna be there anyway.
So you'd work with them, Brad? You guys-
We would work with these guys to ensure they're safe when they're going to this, because these are just gonna be civilian.
Yeah, they're not gonna have.
No training for,
a weapon or anything.
no.
Right.
So we'll go with them, and then, but any administrative search warrant, we can apply for those as law enforcement officers too, and we work
Okay.
through the city
So I
attorney's
just wanna
office.
make sure that they aren't left out of the,
Right, no,
out
that's
of
a good
the,
point.
because now we have a code enforcement officer, I don't want them left out of the loop.
Yeah, and I would think, I mean, they're gonna be the experts in this area, our guys, they're not gonna know building code stuff, so
Right.
this isn't gonna be something they're gonna be real privy to, so we're gonna lean on them to write the warrant, and we'll just assist where needed.
Just assist it, okay.
Now, the thing too to say is, a search warrant would be really rare occasion. I mean, the fact is, if you don't let us in, you're not gonna get a rental housing license. If you don't have a rental housing license, you're not renting the property, the premise out. So I think it'd be very rare. The city's gonna look for other avenues to gain compliance. We don't wanna be the Gestapo trying to administer this.
Yeah, and I think both of them state that, you know, you try to arrange for a reasonable time with both the tenant and the owner, and if there are corrections that need to be made, then the tenant of the property or an occupant has to allow the owner or his designated, say, maintenance person, time to come in and make repairs, say to the furnace or toilets or whatever, so that has to be worked out. And then as Mike mentioned, you know, the same as with the code enforcement officer, if we have a property we absolutely cannot get into or denied entry, then we would go with the search warrant. Another good point Mike had is that they won't let us in, they don't get a rental housing
They don't get
permit,
the
so,
rental, okay.
yeah. Okay, so we covered the search warrant, violation notice.
And just, you kinda skipped over, you skipped ahead. One note is, the permits right now, the way it's drafted, would be a 3-year permit for all types of rental housing.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Okay, we did the search warrant violation notice. There is a sample of what the code enforcement officer would use to correct any deficiencies in an apartment. And I think Dave has looked over this for compliance with Iowa code, and I think everything's above board with that, Dave, the way you see it?
Yes.
Okay. And basically it gives them 30 days to correct any issue, and you also, you will advise them that they can do a written notice of appeal to the, it's coming up here on the next page or two, but a review board for that, so we'll get to that, but they have that right if they think that the code enforcement officer is being too stringent, picking on them, whatever, they can have an appeal.
I
Okay.
think this had the appeal board set up in two, right?
This, yeah, we're coming up to that here, where it's an appointment by the mayor, but we'll cover that in a few minutes here. Denial or revocation of rental permit, and that is the next form we'll be using here in order to vacate. And if something is not getting done, correcting a problem within an apartment or single-family dwelling or rental property, there is a form here that we'd use to have an order to vacate. So we would give them a specific amount of time, 30 days, and receipt of the notice, they have to vacate. And then again, that is subject to an appeal, a written appeal within 7 days to the Board of Appeals, I guess, on this.
Greg, how different is this form in comparison to the one that you guys had used with the city apartments? Is it pretty much the same?
Yeah, that was more of the dangerous building
Just
type.
dangerous building type,
Yeah,
okay.
that prohibited entry by anybody.
And we'll still have those available too?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
You don't get rid of those?
Yeah, and that's maybe coming up here too in this emergency order to vacate.
Okay.
And that one would be used, if there were something immediately, harmful to life, property, that kind of thing. I think Mike used the term good, that if it was a refrigerator holding up the kitchen ceiling, that would be a reason for an emergency, to vacate notice, so.
I seen that, by the way.
Did you? So, and that gives them 48 hours to vacate. So it's tightened up quite a little. So it gives them that, and it gives them 24 hours to file an appeal also. Okay, I don't know if there's any questions with that, but that's kind of the forms that we'll use. Yeah?
Just a quick question. I mean, you mentioned that we're not gonna be the police, but, and I haven't read through all this detail, but this person, are they gonna be looking, I mean, inside the homes when they're doing this initial look? Because you said, I mean, we're not gonna police everything, but if they're taking a look inside, then they'd be able to see that the ceiling's falling on the fridge. I just didn't know if they were more looking outside at code or if they're going in and out.
Yeah,
everything.
in and out.
I just wanna make sure.
Yeah, and further down in the code, there's provisions in
Okay.
there that the
Yeah.
tenants or people that rent have a responsibility too, to keep the place neat,
Right.
but, we'll get to that. Okay, then there's the Housing Appeals Board. I don't know if you wanna cover that, but that is, 3 members who do not hold any elective office and is basically appointed by the mayor with council approval. And Mike and I had some discussions of who that might be. We didn't know whether it could be city staff or just, 3 independent persons, and we didn't know whether it'd be good to have maybe someone that owns property that rents, or, how that board would be established. That'll be something we'll need to discuss.
How did you come up with 3 members?
Just, it was in other codes that I saw,
Okay.
so that was kind of the number. I guess
Isn't
we
the
could have it
county-
be whatever we
County
want.
has one, isn't there 3 or 4?
I'm not sure, yeah.
4 of the
3 is always, an odd number's always
Yeah.
good, just so you don't have ties. And I think to the point that you'd made earlier, it's difficult to find members to these boards.
Yeah.
And this is somewhat of a specialized board anyhow. I don't see a lot of people wanting to jump up and down on it, but it's important to fill these positions.
Especially with item 2 there on compensation, so serve without compensation, so. And you're right, the Board of Adjustment, Planning and Zoning, all those serve without compensation, so those people are doing a good service for the city. Okay, so then there's a procedure for that. When they receive written appeal, they have to set a time and place for the hearing and go over that. And I kinda look at this as maybe like the Board of Adjustment, they may grant additional time for compliance with the code, and they can, grant a variance also, meeting certain criteria, with that, so, there's a few things listed there that are reasons they could grant a variance, and hopefully they'll follow that. Okay?
So if, Dave, I guess maybe that, my question would be for you, but if they want to appeal this board, does it then go into the court system?
It's a good question, because we don't have that addressed
You're right, it's,
in the ordinance. It would probably have to follow an administrative procedure,
okay,
which I think would then probably come up to the council for a decision. And then after that decision, it would need to go to the district court.
would it behoove us to outline that process in this? So it makes it clear,
It might be something we wanna discuss a little bit more.
okay,
And it does depend on the process, because some stuff like the
Yes.
variance made, I thought under statute could not come to council. It's quasi-judicial board, they are the final act, then it goes to district court.
district court.
And again, that's a good question. I don't think this appeals board has any statutory directive like a board of adjustment would.
Okay.
And the statute with the board of adjustment says, you are the final word. No go to the council, goes to district court. So we may have to do a little bit more
On this, okay.
work on that.
When I was
If
going
that's
through this, it was just like, so if someone appeals, now what do we do? I was just thinking about some of those dog issues, the vicious dog stuff. It goes to the council, well, where does that person have a chance to go to? They can get a remediation through the court system. Well, but that's outlined, so where do they go from this point? Do they go to
Well, actually, I don't think our ordinance does provide a final decision-making process with our animals. I think that's kind of dictated by the
I
legal,
figured, maybe you told me that.
I think
That
that's
was
the legal,
just the legal perspective.
process, right?
But this,
Because you'd have to argue that the council or this appeals board acted illegally to then take it up to the district court. That's a good point. We'll
just so it's a little
kick that.
clearer,
And
yeah.
one question is, I mean, if the council so choose to allow this housing board to be kind of that final decision maker, they wouldn't necessarily have to say no, these things can come to council. Could they opt to say no if you want to appeal and it goes to district court? So, I mean,
Sure.
the council may not want to hear a whole bunch of housing appeals.
But that's the
And I
part
would
that I
think
was
it
trying
would.
to, I guess that's one of the things I'm trying to say is, well, I don't want this stuff coming to the council all the time if this starts to get to be a mess. You know, I'm just thinking, when we change that vicious dog thing, and then all of a sudden it's like, it's raining cats and dogs. We're doing a
Or these
little more,
dogs.
yeah, these dogs, but I'm like, do we want this part of a council session? It's just the anxiety of having to do that with a vicious dog. Do we want our council having the anxiety, having to go through something like this? So, okay, thanks.
Okay, I passed out a handout, and I think this is a really good kind of a form or template for us to use for inspections. I think Brad found this at the city of Storm Lake. So we'll go through some of the minimum, structure standards for all rental dwellings. And, a lot of the things we're gonna cover now are covered in that, the Storm Lake, inspection form. So, I don't know, I'll just kind of briefly go over all the minimum requirements of a rental facility. Kitchens, you have to have a kitchen or a kitchenette with equipped as follows with approved kitchen sink, space capable of properly accommodating a refrigerator and stove or range, proper terminals to connect those appliances, adequate space for the storage of food. Okay, then a water closet or toilet. Every dwelling unit shall contain an approved water closet. Has to have a bathtub. Lavatory basin required. Every dwelling unit shall contain a lavatory basin within the adjacent room containing a toilet. Privacy room, for containing a toilet or bathroom, you have to have a privacy around that. You have to have a water heater operating, and all of the sinks and everything else in the apartment or rental house has to be connected to an approved sewer system. Exits, well, we'll be checking for proper exiting. You have to have at least 2 means of egress, and that's pretty much a standard in the code now, two ways out. And windows used for exits for means of egress shall have a minimum net clear opening of 4.0 square feet. Now, that is somewhat smaller than what's required in new construction now, but again, it gives a little latitude for maybe some older houses or older rooming units that are in existence at the time we're putting this in, to have a little leeway there. You know, if the code official sees it and says, yeah, I think that's okay, and it meets the 22 by 18 inches of opening to get in and out, that would be acceptable. So I was glad to see that little flexibility there, because a lot of older homes don't totally comply with the new code, so.
In my past experience, this window provision was always a stickler on rental housing. When you have an older house, an existing window, and if it didn't meet the code, I mean, the question really becomes, how much issues do you wanna have with our firefighters trying to get into a burning house, and they can't make that opening? And that's why, like the 5.2 square feet, I mean, that's a firefighter going through a window with an air tank on. And if you don't meet that requirement, you really are not getting a firefighter in there. So if there's an area, that's probably where the most pushback will come from landlords, I would guess.
Yeah.
And that's only if there's only one door.
No, every bedroom would
Yeah.
have to have that open.
Every bedroom, okay, so.
But that, isn't that current with new code though too?
Yeah.
It's,
All bedrooms in the basements have to have a,
Yeah.
but an
egress.
existing home, if it's owner
Yeah.
occupied, you don't need to meet that standard. I mean, this is
Right.
now applying a standard even retroactive to current construction out there.
This is every bedroom, whether it's in the basement or any
Yeah.
level.
Absolutely.
And I've had a call on that where we have had a reported egress window that's not an egress window.
Mhm.
And, yeah,
Well, there's some out there, there's no doubt about it. In just owner occupied buildings too, that, it's a little bit scary, so. There is a provision in here too, current code allows for a maximum sill height of 44 inches, but in here it allows you, I think, to put like a 2-foot, step by that window to get you up and out, so. You don't have to lower the window down to that 44 inches, you can get by with putting a stool maybe used to get that to 44 inches. Okay, stairways, doors, windows, accessible from the outside shall be lockable. Basically, it talks about every window has to be operable, they can't be painted shut. If they're to the outside of the structure, all have to work. Ventilation, and I thought this was good too, ventilation unit, in rental units shall be free from dangerous levels of air pollution from carbon monoxide, sewer gas, fuel gas, dust, black mold, and other harmful pollutants. I know mold is kind of a big issue today, so we do address that in there. If there's mold and it's because of ventilation, we can take some action there, so.
How about radon?
I didn't see anything in here on radon, nothing.
If they're like in a basement?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know if that's subject to inspection anywhere, but.
No, not that I'm aware of. I know it's a concern out there, especially in Carroll, but
No.
we haven't seen an example yet.
Doesn't mean we couldn't create one.
I mean, we can't create one.
Yeah, yeah,
Give that appeals board something to work on.
right. Okay, then it says every system of mechanical ventilation, such as air conditioners, vent fans shall be maintained in operable condition. So vent fans in a bathroom, all that has to be operated. Heating, of course, every dwelling unit shall have a furnace capable of maintaining 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Electrical requirements, every room shall contain at least 2 separate floor type or wall electrical double convenience outlet. And you see that a lot in older homes. Years ago, they maybe put 1 or 2 outlets in a bedroom, so this is saying we should have 2. It doesn't prohibit extension cords if it goes directly from the cord, not under any carpeting or under rugs or that type of thing, hooked directly to an appliance, you can do that. Okay. Okay, then we get into square footage of rooms. Basically, we're saying any room in a rental property has to have a minimum of 70 square foot. There's an exception to that, and that is kitchens. And there are some limitations on communal kitchens in this code that I don't think we have a lot of those. It'd be more for rooming houses and that kind of thing, so I don't think we'll see a lot of that. But every sleeping room intended for a person has to have 70 square foot, and then that increases the more people that sleep in that room. So that may be a little tough to police, but, you know, if somebody says there's gonna be one person sleeping in 70 square feet, the inspector goes in and out, and then they put a double bed in there, or 2 or 3 people stay in there, we may not know that. I mean, that's one of those ones that are a little difficult to enforce. Direct access to each dwelling unit or rooming unit shall, not require first entering any other dwelling unit or rooming unit, so you can't go through somebody's apartment into your apartment. Lighting of public stairways, it covers that for, I think it's 2 to 4 dwelling units, you have to have a light switch in the public passageway, and anything more than 2 to 4 units, you have to have it lit all the time, 24/7, unless there's artificial light during the day that sufficiently lights that. Fire extinguishers, I know a lot of rental properties do not have these now, but it would be approved type of an ABC fire extinguisher, 2.5 pounds. For multi-dwelling units, you have to have it within 75 feet of each apartment. And some of the smaller ones, or I'm thinking of a single-family home, you'd have to provide at least one in that home. So that's something I know a lot of people don't have, so. Early warning fire protection, again, this is a lot of these things are in the new code right now. They shall have a centrally located smoke detector on each level and one in each bedroom. And I think that is not asking too much. Detectors are pretty cheap. And, you know, to have those in each bedroom, I think is very important. Carbon monoxide detector would be required in homes with gas-powered appliances such as a stove, clothes dryer, whatever. You'd have to have a carbon monoxide in there. If there's no piping for natural or LP gas, then a monoxide detector would not be required.
That about took my family out in the 80s. We had a gas, or a leak in an exchanger in a furnace, and
Really? Yeah.
very real.
Mhm. Yeah. So again, these are good things that protect people, so I can't see anything in here that's a bad thing, it's gonna be a burden for somebody. And again, those next items on page 19 are more for rooming houses, and I don't know if anybody in here can think of any rooming houses in town. I think the old City Hotel was maybe one of the few rooming houses.
I could think of.
Yeah, that had a communal bathroom and that kind of thing, but that's what that next section of the code covers. Then on page 20, kitchen stoves, refrigerators, and all rental units shall be supplied with a stove or range and refrigerator by the owner or tenant. So, I mean, if we inspect and there's nothing in there, no provisions for it, they have to have it before somebody can move in.
You might get some of that, you know, bathroom with the Airbnbs.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in places where, you know, 3 different people shared the bathroom.
That's an interesting point there, Laverne, and I don't know, I don't know if bed and breakfasts are subject to rental housing inspection. That's more like a hotel motel, probably.
That's what your
I don't know.
Airbnbs are.
Yeah,
Airbnb is a hotel motel.
Well, it can be treated like that, yeah.
yeah.
I know your New Hope has communal kitchens,
Mhm.
but I don't believe they have communal bathrooms,
Okay.
but.
Yeah, so there may be out there, Misty, that, and, you know, we'll know when we find out, but there are provisions in here if we do run into that, so. Okay, then, these are responsibilities of the owners, relating to maintenance. And it gets into the foundation, you know, being in good condition, foundation, floor, exterior, walls, windows shall be maintained reasonably weather tight and rodent proof. Every door, that's what I talked about before, every door hinge, door latch, door lock shall be maintained in good functional condition. And it shall open and close and fit reasonably well. And again, windows, all the same. Maintenance of accessory structures, if there's an unattached garage, it has to be maintained also and painted, you know, in good condition there. Rainwater drainage, all eaves and downspouts attached to these structures have to be maintained operable. Grading and drainage and landscaping of the premise all have to be in a manner that will allow the property to drain and not allow water to accumulate and stagnate. Chimneys and smoke pipes have to be in good repair. Protection of exterior wood surfaces, this would be where, you know, if paint's peeling and that, I think in the Storm Lake when it talks about, something about 58% or 60% has to be covered. So that gives you a little bit of leverage if the place, you know, looks in disrepair because of paint. That's where that comes into play with protection of the wood surfaces. Every means of egress shall be maintained in good condition, shall be free of obstructions at all times. Hanging screens and storm windows, that's the old days when you put storm windows on in the fall and took them off, put screens on in the spring. Electrical system of every dwelling, accessory structure shall be maintained and prevented from being overloaded. Kitchen, stoves, refrigerators, kitchens, kitchenettes, and all rental dwelling units shall be supplied with a stove and range refrigerator by the owner or operator tenants. We talked about that, so maybe backing up there. Page 21, you're over that, landscaping. Maintenance of gas appliances and facilities, they all have to be maintained in the code. Black iron pipe, they allow flexible appliance connectors. Maintenance of heating, cooling equipment shall be maintained in good and safe working condition. Pest extermination, that's kind of interesting there, that if the owner of a rental property has infestation in 2 or more of the units, he can deal with the property. He's got, he can deal with it himself, but after 30 days, if he's not eliminated the problem, then he must get a licensed exterminator to come in and treat the property. So that would be, I don't know, bed bugs or cockroaches, anything else like that. If he can't take care of them in 30 days, then he has to bring in a professional to take care of it. Let's see, public areas, fencing has to be kept reasonably good state of repair or removed. And then it gets into responsibilities of occupants. And I think this is good too, if, you know, somebody's living in an apartment and they're a hoarder and have things pile all over the place, you know, we can have some leverage here to get that cleaned up in cooperation with the owner. Every floor covering shall be kept reasonably clean, wall and ceilings kept clean. You can't use the dwelling for storage of refuse, dangerous chemicals. So, I don't know, is there any other questions on that, I guess, when we keep going? Storage and disposal of garbage, you know, you have to maintain your place free from that kind of thing. You can't store it and accumulate it in a bedroom or whatever. Electrical wiring, that's where it talks about no temporary wiring, extension cords and so on. So, then it gets down to the penalty phase, and any violation of provisions of this chapter may constitute a municipal infraction. And I think that's where Dave comes in. It says chapter 4 of this code, but I believe it's chapter 1, is it, of the city code of ordinances? For a municipal infraction if they're in violation, Dave, and I think that we talked about before.
I'm not exactly sure of the chapter number, Greg. I thought 4 seems familiar.
The penalty is established in 4, I believe.
Is it? Okay, so that's maybe all right then. But we'll check that and make sure that it's correct. But it says chapter 4 of this code of ordinances, probably should say city code of ordinances. Yeah, that's what it is, yeah. Yeah, so that's just maybe a little typo there. It should be chapter 4 of the city code of ordinances that deals with municipal infractions.
Question for you, if the inspector comes across illegal activity, CMF lab or something going on there, for example, does that need to be addressed at all, what the actions of the inspector would be?
I don't know if you need to establish it in a code, more of a job description, or maybe just an unwritten rule. We'd be able to use them as a probable cause for a search warrant at that point.
And I think the way I understand it, if it's in plain view, is that right? If the code enforcement officer goes in and sees whatever illegal drugs on the table, then we could notify.
Yep, they'd be able to notify us. And this is like if an officer had entered a house to deal with a barking dog complaint, there was a narcotic sitting on the table, so similar to that. And I would, there's gonna be some training for this code enforcement officer, and that may be one of them we think about, our, you know, criminal activity training that they may have to take too, so that'll all be determined, but I don't think you need to establish that necessarily in the ordinance, but maybe part of the job description.
So what's the fee for the permit?
Yeah, Mike was talking about that a little, and I think in the budget, you had some numbers in there for that.
So in the budget, we kind of played with some numbers, and by no means, I think, with the sense of recovering some of the cost of the inspector versus the other things that we anticipate the inspector to do. So this was not viewed as a kind of cost neutral addition. But our budget had $100 for a single inspection, $50 for re-inspections. And probably we would look at on a per building would be $100, and then each unit in that building would be $15, and then similar to the re-inspection, $50 for the re-inspect, and then $5 per unit, additional unit in a building. We talked a little bit about, do we want to charge a re-inspect fee for the first re-inspection? And I think one of the cautions